I'm your host, Chef AJ, and today I've brought together 20 of his most esteemed colleagues who are going to pay tribute to him. Speaking first is someone who needs no introduction. He is known as the father of lifestyle medicine. He's been a friend of Dr. McDougall's for many years. Please welcome Dr. Dean Ornish. Thank you so much, Dr. Ornish. This is such an honor to have you speak.
Oh, thank you so much. Sorry, my daughter was just calling me. I'm actually here in the airport about to get on a plane, which I'm sure John could appreciate. As you said, we're here to celebrate and honor the exceptional life of Dr. John McDougall. And as you all know, John was an exceptional, legendary, visionary, and friend. He was really ahead of everyone, all of us here. And one of my favorite quotes from the Talmud is that he who saves one life is as if he saved the entire world. And in that spirit, I think John saved an entire universe by empowering people to make healthier choices and to teach them the importance of that. He went on, he wrote his first best-selling book in 1978 with his wife, Mary, 46 years ago. He went on to write a total of 12 best-selling books. I spoke at his center many times in the Flamingo Resort in Santa Rosa. And, one of my other favorite quotes is attributed to Einstein, that if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. And that was part of John's gift. He had a really in-depth understanding of nutrition, and yet he was able to, through his newsletters and his lectures and his seminars, he was able to, and his radio show, he was able to make it simple without being simplistic. And as all you know, John was fearless, and he did not suffer fools gladly. He was quoted in an interview in the Press Democrat saying, he said, when I started, I was a little more edgy. I would talk about how heart surgeons were killing people. He said, I'm mellowed. I'm a little more diplomatic now. And that was certainly on display when we spoke at the United States Department of Agriculture conference in 2000, which got billed everywhere as a food fight. It was he and I and Atkins and people like that. And I debated Atkins many times as he did, and it was just nice to feel like we were in a bunker together. In 1972, when he and Mary first got married, they moved to Hawaii, started a young family, did his residency, and that's where I think he first discovered his life's passion and calling. When the patients at the plantations, he would saw that the first generation Filipinos and Japanese and Chinese kept their same diet, and they were healthy. And then the second generation began to eat like us and live like us and die like us. And he was always looking for leverage points, as all of us are. And one was the Medical Board of California approved his much-awaited action plan in February of 2014. Pardon me, through a Senate bill that he helped champion, Senate Bill 380. But it was even though it was, and it passed unanimously at both houses, which almost never happens, especially in such a polarized environment. Then Governor Jerry Brown signed it into law, and the whole point of it was to remedy the lack of nutrition knowledge. I'm on the nutrition working group of the American College of Cardiology with Essie and others, and we published a paper a few years ago. The average doctor gets 4 hours of nutrition training a year, and the average cardiology fellow in 4 years of fellowship gets none. And so the Senate Bill 380 was designed to, make sure that doctors had some training in nutrition. Not a very radical idea, but the medical board just kind of did it in name only, but not really in the way that it should have been. And so I would see John from time to time when I'd speak for him or at conferences. And, the McDougals lost their home in 2017 in the Tubbs fire. And the same year he retired from running his program. I just thought, like, why him? Of all people who've done so much good in the world, his number one pleasure in life was helping others and his family. And I think of all the titles and rewards that I've received, my most cherished one was be as his friend. So Godspeed, old friend. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ornish. That was a beautiful tribute, and safe travels wherever you go. Next up, we have another icon in the plant-based world who needs no introduction. I'm going to ask you to unmute Dr. Campbell. I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Campbell, the co-author of the China study. Dr. Campbell, please unmute. There's a little icon on the toolbar below. It looks like a microphone. You have to click it and you'll be able to, I think we can hear you now, Dr. Campbell. Say something.
Okay, thank you so much for the invitation, and hello, Mary, by the way, and John's family. It's really a pleasure to be here to honor my friend John, Dr. McDougall. My friendship with him goes back quite a long ways. It does for most everyone else here, I believe. The thing about the first thing I want to say is just to show on my arm here this little black band. This came about when my family and I, there were 13 of us at the time, if you can believe it, who went to visit John McDougall, Dr. McDougall's thing in Costa Rica, I believe it was. And it was really a nice thing. That was early on when I had just previously met Dr. McDougall. And so I've had this on my wrist the entire time. I'm going to take it off now, but I've never taken it off, not even for a shower, to be honest about it. It's one of those kind of things that can live with the water. But I really have appreciated my friendship with Dr. McDougall over the years. There were special moments. I attended, of course, several of his conferences to present. And of course, that was all really very special. And one of the things about Dr. McDougall I really appreciated was the fact that when he was telling me his story in residence at the University of Hawaii, he didn't suffer, I don't know, it's a crude word to say at this time, but suffer fools easily. And we all know that. He really spoke his mind. I really, really appreciated that because being in the medical research community rather than the clinical community, quite frankly, way back in the late 70s or so, a little bit after that, there were some questions being raised by people who talked like he did. And the kind of things were said I just thought were not exactly appropriate. And so on one occasion, I happened to see a book that he had written. It was a 1984 book. Dr. Ornish just mentioned something in 1978. I didn't know his first one was that year, but the 1984 book was the one that caught my attention. And I had been told prior to that it's not the book to read. Unfortunately, we have these kind of divisions in our areas, which are really unfortunate. But in his particular case, I looked at the book and read the book. I said, wait a minute. I had been on a committee where people were raising questions about what's legitimate in this area and what's not. I looked at the book and I said, wait a minute, why is he getting criticism here? I've since learned that. It's been rather foreboding in a sense. But in any case, I really like that. And so we contacted each other. I was at Dr. Goldhamer's place at the time when I first learned about Dr. McDougall, met him, and there it went after that. And I just really appreciated over the years Dr. McDougall's frankness, his boldness, I should say, and his brilliance. I mean, he was obviously working with patients, very, very dedicated. I just thought that was a pleasure for me to get to know him and his family. Dr. McDougall had us again later after we went to Costa Rica to his place in Lake Tahoe for a week. It was all very nice. John was a very friendly fellow as far as I was concerned, and I really enjoyed the relationship. And of course, over the years, his reputation has only grown. And I'm so happy to say that he's just about the best of the best. And in my view, he really he did his work, and he was early in on doing the work. And I really am. It's a real pleasure to be here. So I'm going to remember. I remember John all this time with this silly little black band, but there it is, and I've never taken it off once since then. That was I think about 10 years ago, maybe, or something like that. maybe 10 years ago.
That's lovely, Dr. Campbell. Dr. Campbell, do you remember about 7 years ago, you did an interview of Dr. McDougall? It's on your YouTube channel and website. It's one of the best interviews I've ever seen. Do you recall that interview?
Yes, I did. It wasn't too long ago, but in any case, I did want to, to be honest about it, I'm not into this sort of thing very much myself, but in this case, he was the first and almost the only one that I really actually was the one who actually interviewed itself. And so it was nice. I really enjoyed that because I just wanted John to be able to get the opportunity to say, whatever is on his mind. I thought he did, the public really needed to know. Everyone sort of knew anyhow in this area, I'm sure, but nonetheless, it was a real privilege to do that. Yeah.
Well, for someone who doesn't do interviews, it was an amazing interview. I'll link to it below in the show notes. What quality did you admire most in Dr. McDougall?
His boldness. He was very frank, and I saw it personally as well as in conferences. And in conferences, he wasn't afraid to say exactly what he thought. And I really appreciate that. I like that in people, let alone people in the professions, to speak with his authority, his experience, and his kindness. That was it. And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. He was a truth teller, wasn't he?
He was a truth in the truest sense of the word. Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
I know he was proud to call you his friend. Thank you so much, Dr. Campbell, for your work and for your tribute to Dr. McDougall.
Thank you.
It is my pleasure. Well, we just keep having one plant-based royal after another. So next we have the Esselstyns, Dr. Caldwell B. Esselstyn Jr. and his wife, Ann Esselstyn. I'm going to ask you both to unmute. I'm sorry, I'm keeping everyone muted just to have the best quality recording. There you are. Hello from Cleveland.
AJ, thank you for this honor. And hello to Mary and John's children. Dr. John McDougall has not passed away. His awesome presence, his knowledge, his passion for the truth and tenacity of purpose will continue to guide us. When I read the McDougall Plan in 1984, it was the absolute touchstone that catalyzed my interest in nutrition. With John's family carrying on his mission, we will continue to embrace and benefit from the wondrous offerings of this honorable human being. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Esselstyn. I'd like to ask you the same question I asked Dr. Campbell. What quality in Dr. McDougall did you admire the most?
Well, I think it goes hand in hand. I think you cannot overlook not only his candor and his frankness and his boldness and his willingness to speak the truth and hold others' toes to the fire. He had an incredible way of showing his friendship. And that was so powerful, because along with his friendship, you had this wonderful mind understanding the science and trying to get the truth out, not only to the United States, but to the entire world. And he did it so boldly, effectively, and with the energy that we all respect. And we cannot believe that he's gone.
Yeah. How long did you know him, Dr. Esselstyn?
Well, I think it was probably goes back at least 25 years. And I had such a wonderful opportunity to speak at several of his conferences.
Yep. I always think of you, it's similar to Dr. McDougall, and that as wonderful as you were with all your information, you both kind of had a secret weapon in common. You know what I mean?
You're testing me.
Well, you both, he had Mary, you had Anne, you had all the research and the science, but you both were married to incredible women, wrote incredible books and incredible recipes so that the people that wanted to do this diet were able to do it easily and deliciously.
Well, she's right beside me.
If she'd like to say hello, we'd love to see her.
Oh, heavens. I do have to say that a number of years ago when my brother got pancreatic cancer. The first person that we called was John, just because I think it just shows how much we trusted John and whatever he thought. And he gave his usual John straight answer.
Thank you so much to the Esselstyn family. I appreciate you being here. Next up, we have Dr. Neal Barnard, and he's going to say a few words.
Well, thank you, AJ. Thanks so much to you, and also thanks to Colin and to Essie and Ann for your comments. I have to say, I met John and Mary, I think it was 1986, 87, somewhere in there. And I knew a little bit about his story already before I met him. I mean, this is the most incredible person. He was age 18. He had this massive stroke. He was paralyzed on one side for a couple of weeks, unable to move. And, you know, that story never works out well. I mean, you're talking about a person who's going to have another stroke. Their life is going to be terribly foreshortened. Here was a man who decided, wait a minute, let me look into the things that caused this problem, not just for him, but for other people. When he got into practice, he wanted to know, what is it that allowed some people to do well, others not do well? He devoted his life first to understanding these issues. And then he found a way to communicate them really squarely so that people could understand them as well. And he lived another 6 decades with this passion. And I mean, just an incredible thing. But let me go back for a second. For me, when I first met John, he, for me, was a mentor more than anything else. I mean, anything that I needed to understand or something, I could call him up, I would send him an email, and it could be it was often about a study or a concept I didn't understand. In some cases, it was about a patient where I was kind of perplexed, or sometimes about how do you advance knowledge in the case of where, let's face it, I mean, we've got a lot of forces of money and ignorance working against us sometimes. John had such a great perspective there. And I always found that if I had read something that I didn't understand or I thought was wrong, and then John had a different opinion, it turned out John was always right. I would always look into things, and I would find that he had this foundation of knowledge. But one of the things that brought this to my attention really strongly, John was here in Washington, and WAMU radio wanted him on the air. They had a talk show. It was at 7:00. The host was Fred Fisk, and everybody would listen to this show where they would bring on an expert, and then they would open the phones for calls. And it was an hour-long program. And John laid out his nutrition knowledge, and people really loved it. And they found that they were actually getting the straight story. So the host, Fred Fisk, said to John, "This is extraordinary. We've had so many calls. Do you mind? Could you stay for one more hour?" And he said, "Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's do this." He stayed on for another hour. The phones lit up. Everyone had questions. And I thought, my goodness sakes, people are asking about every possible organ system. I thought, I'm glad it's him and not me. And he was really, really helpful. After 2 hours, the host turned to him and said, "I can't believe I have to ask you this. The phones have not stopped. Will you stay for one more hour?" This had never happened, so far as I know, on public radio anywhere. So yes, he did 3 hours, and then finally he got off. And I just thought, this is a guy who's really smart, but able to communicate things in a practical way. Okay, last thing I just want to say about John is he brought people together in such a good way. He would invite people to come to his conference to present their viewpoint. And he was interested in things, and he was always learning and always interested in, he kind of knew me as a person who not only was a doctor, but had kind of a heart for animals. And I remember him eventually saying, you know, there's really a lot to not just the bad parts of eating animal products, but the need for compassion is something that I started to hear him talk more and more about as well. So anyway, this is a person who was always so kind, so smart, so willing to learn and challenge himself, and so honest and just willing to help other people. And I just am never going to forget those. And I've always, to this day, like when I met him and I felt he was a mentor, I'm trying to kind of channel my inner John sometimes when I get a little stuck. So anyway, AJ, I've talked enough, but those are a few thoughts about John.
Dr. Barnard, what you said about him staying an hour longer at a radio station, that doesn't surprise me because he would do my show every month. And if there were questions, he would stay on 4 hours and until every question was answered.
It wasn't just his generosity. It was the fact that the station wanted him and that the people wanted his wisdom, because he had it and people knew he was the straight story.
Yeah. What did you admire most about him?
Well, there's lots of things, but I have to say, I really think it was his perspective. And by perspective, I mean, he wanted to become knowledgeable and to use his knowledge for what? Not to just finish a book or to do a show. He, I think, always carried with him the image of the patients that he treated and the families they came from. And he wanted to help preserve their life and their health as well as could be. And that perspective, I think, is a wonderful thing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Barnard. I appreciate you coming to the tribute and all your work. Thank you. Okay, next we have another example of plant-based royalty. Dr. Michael Klapper is in the house. If you could just unmute Dr. Klapper. There we go.
Well, AJ, thank you for the invitation to join this august group of colleagues and friends, all of us who love and admire Dr. McDougall. And hello to Mary and Heather and the entire McDougall family. And thank you for sharing him as you did all these years and still continue to do as you continue his work. It was back in 1983. I had become a vegan physician only 2 years before. And I became a vegan and then found myself a vegan physician, and people coming to me with all sorts of questions about, is this a reasonable thing to do? And I'm diabetic on insulin, and should I go on this diet? Will my blood sugar drop? A whole bunch of medical serious concerns that I really had no experience with. I'm just feeling myself, my own body change for the better when I adopted a vegan diet. But here I am giving advice that I think makes physiologic sense, but I really don't know. I really didn't have any experience in that world. And just when I was feeling the most lost, I happened to be walking past the radio in the kitchen, and there was an interview. I was living in Central Florida, and there was an interview from a station in Orlando where Clive Thomas was interviewing this doctor who had all these very solid answers with a very positive enthusiasm about plant-based nutrition and his wonderful experience with it. Well, I was transfixed for 90 minutes. I was just not only listening and learning, but saying, thank you. There's another doctor out there validating this. And right after the interview was over, I picked up the phone, got the number of the radio station, called him at the radio station, and he proceeded to talk with me for a good 20, 25 minutes. I said, let me send you my book, The McDougall Plan, which he certainly did. And that started a 40-plus year friendship where he and I stayed in touch, and I followed his exploits. And so many things came into crystal clear focus about this man. The seriousness about which he took medicine and the ability of plant-based diets to reverse these diseases. The earnestness that he wanted to share this with the medical colleagues and the world. He had this seething anger, if you will, deep down inside that there's this powerful, beautiful truth that could alleviate human suffering as well as animal suffering, that would heal so many things. And yet this jewel is just laying at the feet of the people who need to use it the most, the medical profession and the public. And part of him was an Irish street brawler deep down inside that felt angry about this. But of course, being the class man that he did, he sublimated that anger into action, because that's the only thing that really matters. You can seethe and talk all you want, but what are you going to do about it? Well, John did. He established certainly the McDougall program, this remarkable 12-day program in Santa Rosa, California, and that changed the lives of so many people, did it in such a great way. I was honored to speak there a few times. But also he needed to reach our medical colleagues. And so he started his advanced study weekends. Boy, talk about a class enterprise. It was such a pleasure, such an honor, because I was working at True North just a mile away, so I was able to attend, and honored that he asked me to speak there a couple times. To watch him bring in these remarkable scientists and physicians and researchers from around the world, these big names that may not mean much to many of your listeners, but those of us into nutritional medicine certainly know Dr. David Jenkins from Toronto, Dr. Luigi Fontana from St. Louis. These people who are just names on research papers, he made them appear and talked to them, and they became human. And they shared their insights in a way that we could all understand. So there was this level of professionalism, as well as just wanting, just his love for people and wanting them to understand, wanting them to live healthier lives. And this passion drove everything that he did, and yet there was that lovely human being inside. When we watched his grandchildren get born, and his whole life mature right in front of us, and which he shared with all of us. And whatever the public needed, right? We want to sugarcoat it, so to speak. Let's go to Costa Rica and talk about healthy eating. And so they did do that, and these wonderful cruises that he took, whatever it took to get this joyful but powerful healing message across. John was willing to do it. And so he was this remarkable blend of integrity and good nature and loving giving, but also a fiery advocate for this profound truth that would alleviate so much human suffering. I think he was tortured inside, as we all are. Everyone on this call feels this exquisite pain inside, because we all know if the world would adopt a plant-based diet, if adopt a McDougall-style diet tomorrow, it would change life on Earth. It would change all our professions. It would change the lives of so many people. And John knew that, and he was trying to get that truth out to all of us. And he did it in such a classy way, such a loving way, such an effective way, that his mark is indelible. So I have nothing but gratitude that I was able to know this remarkable man, this fellow physician, that, like Dr. Barnard said, was always a couple steps ahead of me. And thank heavens that he was. And he added an air of legitimacy and light to what I was just feeling my way through. John had already been 3 steps ahead, had the research published, and was making it available to all of us. And that added such a feeling of confidence to my teaching and my learning about this remarkable subject. So John may be gone, but he's not out of my life, and he's not out of my being. His fire lives in my heart. And as I work through our nonprofit Moving Medicine Forward, where I'm trying to reach the medical students with this plant-based message before pharmacosclerosis sets into their brains, that they think that drugs and surgery are the only treatment. It's the food. These are reversible diseases, and a plant-based diet is the key to reversing these diseases. Every medical student needs to know that. And John was helping with getting that message across, and his fire lives in me as I work to get that message out. But also John's eyes. When I read a medical paper, I've got his eyes. Who's the author here? What's the slant on this study? How valid are the results? I've got John lives in my ears as I hear people talk about the latest studies. What would John say? Well, how would he hear this? And so his gift permeates all of us. There's no, you can't unring the bell, and he rang it loud and clear for all of us. And there's no going back. And it feels like we're on the precipice of a large awakening and an understanding of humanity, the importance of changing our diet. And John has been a major catalyst to make that happen. And for that, I will always be grateful how he touched all of our lives, and certainly mine and all my patients, that his influence helped live healthier lives. So thank you, John, wherever you are. Thank you for still living within all of us, and know that we will be carrying on your work with the class. And
That's what he would have wanted. Thank you, Dr. Klapper. And I'm so glad you mentioned the Advanced Study Weekend, because we both spoke at one in 2015. And so many of the people that are here today, I met at a McDougall Advanced Study Weekend, like Brenda Davis. He was just a great connector of people. And even though there's wonderful plant-based conferences, the McDougall Advanced Study Weekend it was like such a class act. It was like going to the Academy Awards of plant-based conferences. And just he was a showman. And, you know, in addition to speaking, you sometimes were a doctor in the 12-day program, weren't you, occasionally?
Indeed, he had patients coming through, and they needed cardiograms, electric and physical exams, etc. And I was glad to be recruited among his physician cadres to do the clinical aspects as well. So it was just a joy to work with him on any level.
That's great. Do you either have a funny remembrance of Dr. McDougall, or just the question I've been asking all the guests, what quality did you admire the most?
Oh, his ability not to sweat the small stuff. When he would hear people quibbling over whether 2 grains of salt on your veggies is a threat to health, and he would give you that look. Come on, you get to enjoy the food is the most important thing. Have these people enjoy this eating style, and if a little bit of salt or a little bit of sugar and whatever helps, it's fine. It's the food. It's the food. It's the food is the important thing. And I'll always remember that look in his eye and on his face.
Absolutely. Thank you so, Dr. Klapper. We appreciate you coming and paying tribute. Next, we have the dynamic duo of Dr. Matt Lederman and Dr. Alona Pulde. Please welcome them.
Hello, everyone. And AJ, thank you so much for honoring us in being here. I knew I would get nervous because John McDougall meant a whole lot to me. So I actually wrote something down that I'm going to read. I was trying to think of how I would describe Dr. John McDougall. For me, in so many ways, he felt larger than life, a true legend. The word I landed on after a lot of thought was the Yiddish word mensch. Mensch refers to a person of integrity and honor, someone who displays qualities such as kindness, responsibility, and decency. A mensch is someone who is respected and admired not just for what they do, but for the moral and ethical way they conduct themselves. The term is often used to describe someone who acts with compassion and fairness, especially in difficult situations. A mensch is reliable and trustworthy, the kind of person you can count on in times of need. A mensch doesn't shy away from doing what's right, even when it's difficult or unpopular. They stand up for their values and for the well-being of others, often serving as a role model within their community. Whether in small acts of kindness or significant gestures of support, a mensch consistently shows us with a desire to make as a mensch consistently shows up with a desire to make the world a better place. In a world where integrity and kindness are sometimes in short supply, being a mensch is a distinction that sets someone apart as truly admirable and worthy of respect. And it is the perfect word to capture the magic of John McDougall, a man whose influence has profoundly shaped my life, both personally and professionally. John was a rare individual. His intelligence was boundless, and his knowledge never ceased to amaze me. But what truly set him apart for me was his unwavering compassion, his deep care for his patients, and even more so for his family. John became like a father figure to me, someone I could look up to, trust, and learn from in ways that have shaped the person I am today. His wisdom, strength, and kindness were qualities I greatly admired, and I feel fortunate to have had the opportunity to learn from him and share in his journey. As we remember John today, I'm reminded of the countless ways he touched our lives through his groundbreaking work, his unwavering commitment to health and well-being, and most importantly, through his passion and care. His legacy is one of love, dedication, and a tireless pursuit to make the world a better place. I'm so grateful to have known John, and I will carry his memory with me always.
I totally agree with you, Dr. Pulde, like a father figure. I think I cried more when I heard he passed than my own father. So I totally relate to what you said. Thank you.
And I didn't write something, so I'm gonna took some notes there. So I'm forever indebted to John. Much of my success has been influenced by him directly or indirectly. From the moment I decided to leave conventional medicine, I sent an email. I still have that email, from almost 20 years ago. And the first thing that struck me was he responded within minutes. And I was like, oh, wow, this is, pretty amazing that he said, hey, let me help you out. He sent me DVDs, he sent me talks, he sent me the business model of how to create a program. He said, come on up. He was just so generous just from the beginning, and he really empathized with my experience at that time as a hospitalist. So then I spent 10-day program. I would go to his 10-day programs, and he would show, I'd follow him around, and I would see patients, and he would talk me through how to apply diet. He would answer questions. He's the one that taught me how to critically review studies. I took statistics classes, but never did I learn how to pull apart a study the way he showed me how. He showed me how to use medication, when not to use it, when to use it, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, how to apply diet, how to manipulate, modify based on different diseases. He really was a doctor, not an alternative doctor. He said, I'm a mainstream doctor who uses all the tools, not some of them. He introduced me to Brian Wendell, and that created the Forks Over Knives partnership with him that thanks to John. He introduced me to John Mackey, me and Alona, which created our Whole Foods Market connection. I mean, he's just constantly supporting us and helping push us forward, and never, he celebrated our success. And it was so humbling to see him. And he really was a role model. That was another thing about John. How to speak truth and do whatever it takes to help patients and help other people. He was a role model and someone I could look up to and try to show up the way he shows up. And patients loved him. I mean, if you weren't a patient, you only saw him speak, which was sort of a harsher, that bulldog, going at, just sort of fighting the fight because everybody was trying to knock him down. But when you got behind the door in a room with him as a patient, he was so soft and warm and caring that I just wish everybody got to see that side of him. There's few doctors that care more about their patients than what I saw with John. And then he also had a great sense of humor. I love, undoubtedly, the first night of a 10-day program, someone would come in the next morning and say they don't like the food, and he would look at their chart with 10 chronic diseases, look at them, and without missing a beat, he would say, I can see that. I can see that you don't like the food, and that's what we're going to change, right? We're going to get rid of these chronic diseases. We're going to help you lose that weight, and you're going to learn, your taste buds are going to change, and you're going to like that food. So nothing fazed him. I also laughed when I saw him in between patients typing with like this with 2 fingers. And I made fun of him and I said, you type with just 2 fingers? And he goes, Matt, I wrote 13 national best-selling books with those 2 fingers. I said, touche. So, just a great sense of humor, the amazing intellect as people talk about. I could ask him a question about de novo lipogenesis, and he would say, go to this book on page 96, and that will answer your question, Matt. And I'm like, how do you have, 12, 13 books and you know the page number and the book to answer the question that I had. Like his memory, I mean, just he would read something and he could just fire it off. And anybody that argued with him and that claimed to talk about the studies or the data, you know, just couldn't hold a candle there. And I knew better than to say, talk about the data or the studies say, unless I really read the study, if I'm going to talk to him about it, because he not only knew it, but he remembered it. And he was humble. He would also, as much as he would say when he knew something, he would say when he didn't know something. And he would say, yeah, man, I don't know that, or I don't look into that stuff. And that was so reassuring because I could trust the stuff that he did say he knew that much better. To me, a real expert is not a real knowledgeable person is not the person that has the answers to everything, but the ones that say when they don't have the answers to something. So I love that humility about him. And then his family values. I mean, whenever we would talk, it would never start with work or business. It would always, start with how are the children, how's the family, how are the kids. And it wasn't just saying that to go through. I mean, he would remember things about the kids. He would talk about them. He would ask about them. And it really got a sense that he cared. And he would always talk about every program. He was talking about his children, his grandchildren, Mary. I mean, that was just what he led with. And that was his real passion, was family. And it was just really cool to see somebody be so successful at work and prioritize family, which in today's world, a lot of people sacrifice family to be successful at work. And so that was, again, another role model of, hey, you can do both and don't ever sacrifice family for work. And then the last thing is, I think he was, almost always right. Even to the last thing, I remember asking him, if people don't get diseases, chronic diseases because they're eating the diet and they're living so well, then how do they die? And he said to me, Matt, they go to sleep, their heart stops in their sleep, and they just don't wake up and they die peacefully. And that's what happened to him. And so he was even right about that. And I just can't say enough about that man. And my heart goes out to the family. And he will not only always be remembered, but he's alive and present in us and in the work that we're doing and the work we're continuing to try and do. And I will miss him greatly.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lederman. You said so many things that rang true for me. For example, the way he responded to email, it was almost like the second you pressed send, his response would be in your inbox. You know what I mean?
I know. And somehow he would still go windsurfing. And I'm like, did he carry his phone with him on the board or something? I don't know how he did it, but
amazing. I can never even get through my emails. And you mentioned all the people that you wouldn't have met because of him, like John Mackey and Brian Wendell, which went to great friendships and partnerships. And even 2 days before he passed, he was trying to introduce me to somebody who I've been trying to get on the show named H. Gilbert Welch. And he was so generous with introducing people like that.
Yes. He just wanted to help people, whether it was a patient, a colleague, family member. He just loved helping, healing, contributing.
Yeah. One of the things I admired most about him and Dr. Hans Deal, who we did a similar memorial for, is that he was happy for your success too, if you did well.
Right. Yeah. So that's rare too, right? When to see, there was no jealousy or envy. It was just celebration of your success.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, AJ, for doing this.
Thank you. Well, next up, we have a wonderful plant-based doctor named Dr. Neal Nedley, who is actually my personal doctor, the reason that I moved to Northern California so that I could get what Dr. Alan Goldhamer fondly calls a doctor who's not a complete idiot. And I know for a fact that Dr. McDougall greatly admired Dr. Nedley, and they had something very important in common, the love of flying. Please welcome Dr. Neal Nedley.
Well, thank you. Actually, I'm in Zimbabwe, Africa, so it's already Sunday night here. But we're helping to start a plant-based lifestyle center here in the capital city right outside of Harare. So we're doing some speaking and some meeting with groups here. But I began to become aware of McDougall through, of course, his first book, The McDougall Plan. And I was in residency, internal medicine residency, and there was a cardiology rotation that I was doing. And the cardiologist was telling me about an exclusive plant-based diet and how good that could be for the cardiovascular disease. And I didn't agree with him. I wasn't plant-based at that time, but I didn't want to tell him I didn't agree with him. You had to, of course, make your arguments through the medical literature. So I spent several months of after I would see patients in the medical library searching this whole thing out. And I became convinced that yes, a vegetarian diet was good, but I couldn't see how we could necessarily get all of the 8 essential amino acids, also leaving out dairy and eggs and those sorts of things, unless we made special type of arrangements in regards to plant-based. And then another resident handed me this book, the McDougall Plan. And of course, there was a chapter there on protein. And he showed the ROSA standards, how it came up with the 8 different essential amino acids. And then he showed how even broccoli, if you eat enough to maintain your weight, or any vegetable food alone, would actually have enough of those 8 essential amino acids. And the reason why people thought vegetables were deficient was simply because they were looking at side dishes on how they're normally, consumed. And once I saw that, I became convinced, and then I began to understand the rest of the scientific literature in regards to nutrition. I made a change in my own diet. So by the time I was halfway through my internship, I became exclusively plant-based. And of course, have been a follower of John McDougall since that time. Interestingly, my father had really liked a classic book called Ministry of Healing, written back in 1905, which is also a lot about diet, but other things that affect health. And when I saw John McDougall's work, I actually started reading that classic book, and it went completely along with what John McDougall was saying years before and decades before. And that also, of course, gave me additional confidence to move forward. And of course, I've been treating internal medicine diseases for 30 plus years. I did emphasize gastroenterology. And the last 20 years, particularly in the mental health arena, it's kind of interesting. The 2 Neals on this, Neal Barnard is board certified in psychiatry. I in internal medicine, but I've actually probably done more in regards to severe depression, anxiety in the residential plant-based realm. And he has gone more of the diabetes internal medicine realm. But nonetheless, plant-based works for so many different diseases, and it actually is the only diet in a randomized controlled trial that shows benefit with both depression and anxiety within 2 weeks. So a lot of times people will talk about, well, you're cherry picking. What about the Mediterranean diet? What about the keto diet? You can't cherry pick when there's only one cherry. There's only one randomized controlled trial that shows benefit with diet within 2 weeks, and it is a plant-based diet, and we've seen that over and over again in our residential program. So, in regards to what I, appreciated most about John McDougall was his analytical mind, and particularly the amazing thing, he has this history of stroke. Most people, I can tell you that stroke did not affect the frontal lobe of his brain at all because of his keen ability to analyze things and pick up on things and be able to run with them and know that this was factual. Most physicians rely more on consensus organizations and things like that. They're a little bit nervous to go out on their own in regards to, particularly pioneer work like John McDougall in the area of nutrition. And his keen analytical mind and being able to utilize his frontal lobe and have major and majors and minors and not flip it the other way around, which we see so many doctors majoring in minors and minoring in majors. And really, he helped me to realize that the true medicine, as far as what we would call, and I think there's more and more evidence accumulating on this, but true scientific medical care is nutrition and lifestyle first. We should consider pharmaceuticals and surgery as the alternative medicine, and the actual medicine should be in the nutrition and lifestyle realm. There's actually more scientific literature to support that now than the other way around. What I was doing was considered alternative medicine in a way by saying that this isn't where the science is. You know, it's an alternative if the traditional care doesn't work. But really, forward physicians are recognizing very clearly that pharmaceuticals and surgery is the alternative medicine, and the true scientific medicine is nutrition and lifestyle. And that's why I'm in Zimbabwe now, among the 16 million people in Africa, setting up a plant-based center over here.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Nedley. And your New Start program it's sort of like Dr. McDougall when he had his live-in program in Santa Rosa, except you don't let your patients eat dinner.
Well, I'm a little more on the fasting line of True North, but we have found the benefits of ketosis by that 17-hour fast. So plant-based ketosis with that no dinner is science is also proving that to be pretty accurate as well. But I do also say, Chef AJ, that this is not for everybody. I have not put you on that diet.
Yeah, thank you. But I know Dr. McDougall once told a story about you flying a plane. Do you remember that at all?
Well, I have many hours of flying, and it might have had something to do with a door opening up in flight. Or something along that nature. I've had that happen before where the door isn't secure, and there's no way you can close a door in flight when that happens. You have to go and land and do that because of all the pressure differentials and the wind and things like that.
Wow, that's something. Well, thank you so much. I didn't realize you were in another country, so I really appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Nedley. Next up, we have the co-founder of the Plantrition Project, Dr. Scott Stoll. And I'm especially grateful to Dr. Stoll for this reason. A couple of years ago, he asked me to speak at his prestigious Plantrition conference, and unfortunately, I had to turn him down because I had accepted another engagement. Well, as luck would have it, he asked me again last year, and I'm so grateful because that was the year that he awarded Dr. McDougall the Luminary Award. It was the last time I saw him in person. He had his whole family there, his children, and of course, Mary, his sister was there, and I know it meant so much to him, and it was just such a beautiful event. So thank you so much, Dr. Stoll.
Thank you, AJ, and hello, everyone. Nice to see your faces and your names, if I can't see your faces this morning. But I'm honored to be a part of this group, remembering the life of Dr. McDougall. And like you, AJ, that event last year was very special because, you know, it was a unique opportunity to see John again. I hadn't seen him in a number of years. And to see him surrounded by his entire family, which I had never experienced before. You know, all of his children, like you said, his sister, all there to commemorate his amazing life. And the award that we gave him, I chose some specific language because I felt like it really recognized and summarized, you know, his work in this space. And I said that, you know, John McDougall had unwavering vision, a passionate commitment to education, which we all know. And on that point, just a kind of a humorous story. The first time that I was invited to Santa Rosa to speak at his program, somebody came up to me right before I spoke, and they said, "I just want to warn you, as soon as you finish, the first person that's going to ask you questions is going to be John McDougall, and he's going to put your feet to the fire for the things that you say during your talk." So nothing like, you know, giving you a little nerves before you talk, and then everything you're saying, you're thinking, all right, is that the most up-to-date research? What's John going to say about this? But thankfully, when I finished, John only had praise, and we had a beautiful relationship. In fact, the first time I met him was on the scientific advisory board at Whole Foods when I met Colin and S and many other people. And, you know, we had a very good relationship from that point on. So I go on. So passionate commitment to education, which he was passionate about in every single way. And we all are pupils of his education. Novel research, you know, he was committed to publishing research. and documenting the things that he was seeing in clinical practice. And that research laid the foundation for many research studies that are going on today. His tireless advocacy. He was tireless in his constant promotion of the scientific benefits and the evidence of plant-based nutrition. Everywhere I heard him, he was tenaciously defending plant-based nutrition with good science that gave so many people the confidence to step into this, just like Neal was saying, and know that scientifically, this is sound recommendations for our patients. And I said his inspirational leadership in the advancement of whole food plant-based nutrition. He was really an inspiring leader. He stood up for what was right. He stood up with conviction. He stood up with a core sense of what is right and wrong and what is true. And he was ultimately doing that not to just defend whole food plant-based nutrition, but really in defense of patients, knowing that he was working to the best of his ability to provide the greatest recommendation for people to live their best life, free of disease, free of the diseases that hinder them and erode their quality of life. And his tenacious passion came, I think, because of his love for people at the end of the day and his love for his patients. And all of us that sit here have been touched by his life in many ways. And for that, I am very grateful. And part of his living legacy is all of us and all of the people that we touch. And his legacy is exponential, far beyond some published studies, far beyond books, because it lives on in each of us. And it lives on in each of us as we continue to share the message with the people that we reach. So I'm grateful to be a part of this group, and I'm really, truly grateful to have had the honor of meeting John McDougall and his wife, Mary, and his family. And especially, as you said, AJ, that privileged opportunity last year to be with him, to be able to present him a Lifetime Luminary Award, recognizing the work that he has done. And while the award seems insufficient to the work, I think just having everyone gathered in support of him and honoring his life was very special.
It
So
really
thanks,
was.
AJ.
So,
I'll turn it back to you.
thank you. So when you spoke, did he put your feet to the fire?
No, thankfully. I guess thankfully I had everything lined up in the science and he didn't have anything but compliments. So
That's great.
I've done my work beforehand.
I know he spoke very highly of you, as he did everyone that has been invited here today. And I agree with you, his tenaciousness, that was one of my favorite qualities. He was fearless, you know? I mean, he'd say, I would rather be hated than ignored, not me, but he just was fearless.
He really was. Yeah. Really an amazing man.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stoll.
Thank you.
Yeah. So next up, we have someone who worked with Dr. McDougall for many years when he had his program at the Flamingo Hotel. Please welcome Miyoko Schinner.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, AJ, for putting this together, and my deep condolences to Mary and Heather and the McDougall family. I was really shocked when I heard the news, and it actually impacted me. I couldn't stop thinking about his passing for days, because he, in the 10 years or so that I had an opportunity to work with him, teaching cooking classes in his 10-day programs, he really impacted me deeply. He brought humanity to the communication of nutrition. He brought humor to his communication. He didn't intimidate people into becoming plant-based or reducing their intake of oil, sugar, or salt. He humored them. He brought a humanity that I often don't see when I read the literature or hear other doctors speak. Not to belittle any of the other fantastic doctors that are here, but he had a special way of letting you feel like you were okay, no matter where you were in that journey, even though he did provide those scary stories occasionally. I was thrilled when I was first, the invitation to teach in his program. I couldn't believe that they were reaching out to me. And I was very scared when I first met John, but quickly relax because he did bring that humanity and that humility and made you feel like you were a really important component of what he was doing. I felt so appreciated by the entire McDougall family, the many years that I taught there. And I was shocked when I invited him to a party that I had at my house, and he showed up with Mary. And just like Dr. Klapper was saying, he was not uptight. I had made certain dishes just for him. And I told him, you can only eat these. These are just for you. And he goes, oh, it's okay. I'll eat anything. And he thoroughly enjoyed everything I made that day. And he just brought that humanity again, that he was a human being first and foremost, before he was a doctor, before he was an icon, before he was a legend. He was a human being, and he was there at my party as a friend. And I appreciated that so much. There was another incident. I was teaching a variety of different dishes. I would teach farro risotto with mushrooms, or I don't know, some sort of zucchini basil soup, or all of these things. And one day I did something Japanese, and he absolutely loved it. And I had donned this little kimono on just to sort of bring some humor to it along with him. And I pretended that I didn't speak English. And I started out by speaking only Japanese to the people. And he got such a kick out of that he asked me only to do that. So every class after that, I would wear my kimono and I would only speak Japanese. And then people would be like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden I throw my kimono off and start speaking English, and people would crack up. And he just got such a kick out of that. And so he had a way of, it wasn't just about him. He made every single person who spoke at his conference feel like they were bringing something incredibly special as well. So it wasn't just serving his needs. Again, I want to repeat that he absolutely did respond to every single email within seconds, which was remarkable. I could not believe it. If I had any question about my own medical health or anything like that, he was right there responding. I just so appreciate the fact that he was on this planet for 77 years and he gave so much to all of us. Thank you so much, John McDougall. Thank you to the entire McDougall family for carrying on his legend.
Yeah. Thank Miyoko. I love that story because you had told me it once before. And then when we had you speak, you did that little bit and people absolutely loved it. And were you nervous when you had him to your house for dinner?
I was. I thought, oh my God, he's going to be critical of the things that I'm making that aren't completely sugar, oil, or salt free. I mean, I pretty much subscribe to a whole foods plant-based diet and minimize those things. But occasionally, if I'm celebrating, I'll add, I'll do something that's a little richer. And I thought, oh my God, he's going to be so critical. And he wasn't. He was just like, this is wonderful. Because it got, most of the people that come to my parties are not vegan. And it's a way into a plant-based diet.
Yeah, because I had him for dinner once, and I'll tell this story now. Because we were both speaking at the Orange County Veg Fest, and at the time I lived in the desert, and so I said, "Do you want to come for dinner?" I asked Mary, and they go, "Well, you don't live there," and I'm like, "Well, don't worry, I'll figure it out." So my good friend Zena lived near there, and boy, I mean, we were nervous wrecks. I mean, Zena bought a whole new dining room table just because it was like the king was coming, right? She bought a Breville air fryer. It was such a wonderful evening. So yeah, it's fun it was fun having him over. Yeah, thank you so much, Miyoko.
Thank you, AJ.
That was great. Well, next up is Dr. Alan Goldhamer. And Dr. Goldhamer, I think, has a funny story of one time, I believe, having lunch with Dr. McDougall at a McDougall-approved restaurant. And he's going to tell us what actually happened. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Goldhamer.
Well, yeah, I think the words that when you use the words integrity and fearless, that definitely summarizes my experience of John McDougall over 40 years. And it was a little funny. We were, when he first came to town, this was probably in 86 or 88 or something like that. We went to, it might've been a couple of years after that. But anyway, he came to town and they set up, a lot of the restaurants set up McDougall program menu. So they're Mexican restaurants and they'd have wonderful, vegetarian options on the menu. And I remember sitting down with him when we were talking. At that time, he was consulting with us, helping us get patients off medications and whatnot. And they served the McDougall vegan burrito. And I tasted it and I thought, boy, this is really awful. It's like the worst thing I'd tasted. And I said, John, there's something about this thing that's just terrible. And he took a bite and said, oh my God, they put meat in it.
And that was the only time you probably had meat in your whole
That's
life.
the only time I've been experienced, at least since a kid or something. I really didn't know what it was, but he said, oh, they gave you the wrong thing. So the only time I ever had any meat was when I had lunch with John McDougall at a McDougall restaurant. But he was I had a weird relationship with John. He was a mentor, clearly. Had huge influence on me. I mean, when you think about the McDougall plan, that was really the first book that I came across that really emphasized the scientific literature to kind of augment your claims. And he did such a nice job of citing the literature. I thought that was really fabulous. And he would also send us patients and support us, but he always did it in kind of a humorous way because he would like apologize to people if for some reason their blood pressure wasn't coming down enough or whatever with diet, and he wanted them to consider some fasting. He would say, oh, you might go try this, good luck to you. And I think he described us as the punishment. But he was clearly one of the most influential people that I've come across, and I think to a large extent helped us survive in terms of giving us exposure and whatnot. So I'll always be grateful to John and feel very fortunate to have known him all these years.
Yeah, you guys lived in the same town for quite a while.
Oh yeah, for decades. Yeah. In fact, when he retired from seeing individual patients, he turned that responsibility over to our staff, and he'd been hugely helpful in terms of giving us exposure and credibility.
Did you ever get him to play basketball with you?
I never played basketball with him. I don't know that was his sport. I think he was more the windsurfer stuff, and that wasn't something I was willing to do.
Yeah. What quality in Dr. McDougall did you admire the most?
Mostly, I like the fact that he was not only honest, but he had the integrity to speak his mind regardless of the consequences. He wasn't afraid of anything or anyone. And to me, that was a very admirable trait.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Goldhamer. And next up, we have another wonderful plant-based doctor. I did a heartfelt tribute soon after Dr. McDougall's passing with her, and I can put a link below if you'd like to see that one, where we tell a funny, very funny story that happened to us at the Plant Nutrition Conference. Please welcome Dr. Nikki Davis.
Hi there, Chef AJ. How are you?
Good. How you doing? Thanks for coming back.
Good. Yes, of course. Boy, what a day. I've been watching all of these speakers, and it's just, I feel, I don't know, being one of the younger doctors, I think do I really belong here? But he touched my life, and I just want to talk a little bit about, my experience and how he helped me become the kind of doctor that I get to be today. I was a year old when he wrote his first book. So that just makes me realize how lucky I am that my lifetime gets to overlap with his, and I get to experience his wisdom and what he brought to this world by being on the same planet as him at the same time. And I know that I wasn't a huge part of his life. Obviously his family was a big part of his life, all of his patients. I mean, everybody speaking today. But even that little millisecond that I got to have as a part of his life, I'm really grateful for. Probably the thing that I will remember the most is, well, first of all, his book, The Starch Solution, changed my life. I already knew about Dr. McDougall because I had seen videos of him. I was familiar with his work. And because of that, and some other people that I was familiar with who spoke earlier today, I decided to leave my job as a mechanical engineer and go back and do medicine. because I was so passionate about learning how to help treat people using lifestyle changes instead of all the medications and surgeries that we typically do in conventional medicine. So he wrote The Starch Solution, and that came out in 2013, in June of 2013, and I started medical school in August of 2013. So it was really, it's still my favorite Dr. McDougall book, and it is the book that really started my career in medicine. It came out right before I started medical school, and he has probably been the one person, and I'm sure a lot of you know this, but I really fall very much in line with how he practices medicine and what he talks about and how he treats his patients. So I had the chance, during medical school to seek out my own educational opportunities. And thankfully, he had created this nonprofit that allowed medical students to come and learn from him during his 10-day medical live-in programs in Santa Rosa, California. And it would cover the cost of the medical student coming and working with him. And I am just so grateful that I happened to be in medical school at the time that he was doing these live-in programs, and that I got to be a part of it, be a medical student that got to follow him around and see him with his patients, get to see how he treated his patients, getting to see him speak in front of other people, getting to see the changes that were happening to these people that were in this 10-day program that I was a part of in 2016. All of that together just further solidified this passion that I already knew I had to make this my life, make this my living. And so to really get to be sitting next to this legend while he talked to people about nutrition and lifestyle and how that was really the root of what we need to do in medicine. I'm very, very grateful for that opportunity. I got to finish, medical school, go through residency, and now I get to be that kind of a doctor. And I feel really lucky that he was a part of that mentorship. He was always, I know a lot of people have already talked about this, but he was always available and always very giving. He always let me know if you ever need help with just, starting your practice, giving me just tips like, don't open up a brick and mortar, if you want to see people in person, do events like what he did at the Flamingo, book something out. I mean, just little things like that he was always willing to give information. He wanted people to be successful. He wanted all of us to be able to continue to bring this message forward and to help people. Even if I had a question about a specific patient, I wasn't sure what to do, or if maybe, a certain thing that was happening to a patient of mine, had he ever seen that before? And he was always, like you said, on an email, ready to go, telling me, hey, this, here's what I can tell you about this situation. Always willing to help. It's a great loss that he's gone, but I am one of the many people who have been touched by him, who will continue to bring his message to our patients and to the world, because it's important, because it matters, and because it changes people's lives. So thank you so much, Chef AJ, for having me on here today. He truly is an amazing man, and I thank his family for being here and just for sharing him with us.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. And it's so true what you say. Anybody could email him. He gave his email freely, and he would answer your medical questions. Who are we going to email?
I know.
Is anybody here on the Zoom today want to take that role? Anyway, but we had, I'm not gonna say it here. People have to watch the video that we did together. But we had that really fun time with him at the hotel in Palm Desert, and I will never forget it. And you were there.
We did. Yes, I was there.
Yeah, it shocked the world. Thanks so much, Dr. Davis. Next
Thanks,
up
AJ.
is someone who worked with McDougall for many years as his webinar coordinator. And just like many of the people here, I met because of Dr. McDougall. Please welcome Dr. Gustavo Tsa, all the way from Argentina. We've got Zimbabwe, we've got Argentina, we've got Hawaii coming up.
Hello, AJ, and thank you again for having me. And yes, I am all the way down in South America right now, and we met at one of the intensive weekends. And yes, Dr. McDougall was a dear friend to me and a mentor to me for 11 years. And he truly saved my life. And we went on to produce hundreds of webinars. And before I get there, I want to say a little bit about how this connection happened. In 2011, I saw the movie Forks Over Knives, and Dr. McDougall, for some reason, struck, it just really impacted me. I was looking at the time for a way to truly save my life because I saw that I was dying slowly, and I have a history in my family of diabetes and heart disease. So it took me 2 years to save money to attend the live program in Santa Rosa, but that was the only choice that I saw in my life to really to save my life. So in 2013, in August, I went to the Living program, and I had been looking. I have been reading and watching Dr. McDougall for 2 years. When I saw that first day, when I saw him entering the room, I still get goosebumps because he looked like he was 15 feet tall to me. He was this giant that I had been dreaming to meet for 2 years. And finally, I saw him in person. I could not stop soaking in every little word he said. After that, I went back home and I was very, very compliant. I started taking the course for the Starch Solution certification. And this is a funny thing that happened. So I kept in touch with him by email, like you said. He would answer very quickly all the time. And I love the French language, and I love the France. So I was a member in one of the Facebook groups from France that followed the Starch Solution. And for some reason, one of those members asked me if I could talk about the Starch Solution or have a Q&A. And I said yes, even though I was just starting to learn. And it occurred to me in a second of madness, of craziness, that why not ask Dr. McDougall to just come in for like 5 minutes and see if he would answer any questions that I couldn't answer. So I was surprised that he answered immediately. He said, "Oh, sure, why not?" And so it's funny that we produced literally hundreds of webinars. Every week we would do a webinar. And I think it's funny that the first webinar ever was in another language. It was in French with a translator. And he was very excited after that. And he didn't stay 5 minutes. He actually stayed for an hour. And so it was a treat. After that, he expressed to me his the passion to get the message out there, and he was getting tired of traveling, and that he thought this way of conveying the message through the internet was very interesting. We were in the first days of webinars. We were using Google Hangouts, I think. So for my next webinar, I wanted to do it in Spanish, and I wasn't going to ask him to come in because it was in another language, but I told him I was going to do it, and he offered to come in. So our second webinar was yet in another language that was in English. So by the end of that, he was very excited, and I decided, well, it's time for us to do something in English. And so we started promoting these webinars in small groups until we both, and mainly him, felt like we were ready to announced it to all of his followers, and that's how the McDougall webinars started. And I'm so tremendously grateful because every week I had the chance to have in front of me this legend for a few minutes before the webinar and a few minutes after the webinar, and to talk to him and visit with him, and like you all said, see how kind and how passionate and how generous. I mean, for me, sometimes to send him my lab work and have him look at it, it was something totally incredible. And so I'm not only thankful to him, but to the kindness of his family, Heather, Mary. I was able to attend so many of the programs because I would film and do webinars. Then we traveled to Hawaii, and it was just wonderful. Another thing that is kind of funny also regarding the webinars is that since I am my doctorate is in music, I'm a doctor in musical arts and in piano. Since most of the time I was traveling all over the world giving concerts, sometimes these webinars, I would be in the middle of nowhere. Like I remember being in Lithuania and, right before the concert doing a webinar with Dr. McDougall. And, sometimes he didn't know that I was far away. And other times I would be in Finland. Another time I would be in an airport hotel that I had to get so that I could actually do the webinar. So a lot of the webinars with Dr. McDougall that are on my YouTube channel, you may not know, but they have been filmed in Spain, in Italy, in so many different places. And thank you again, AJ. To me, Dr. McDougall is not gone. Whenever I miss him, which is every day, I just watch him in one of his talks, and I continue carrying on his passion. I do webinars, I do programs, and I love the Starch Solution, and I love all of you here. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gustavo. And, I remember we met at the 2015 Advanced Study Weekend where I gave my epic talk called From Fat Vegan to Skinny Bitch, which I didn't want to give. I wanted to just do a talk on calorie density or a demo. He goes, no, you have to tell your life story. And he could have been a great Hollywood producer. He had such vision and foresight, but we met there. And then you came to visit me. I think it was the next January. You were just in town, and, we were visiting, and you were sitting at my dining room table in my apartment in Sherman Oaks. And you said to me, do you want to do a webinar? And I'm like, yeah. And you met no, right now. And I just didn't and I remember, because the thing about Dr. McDougall is he does email you right away. And I said, look, Gustavo's here. Do you mind? And he's like, no. And he had such some people are very, I don't know what the word is, but they don't want to share their resources or their friends. And he's like, no, absolutely. And you and I had something in common, because when I started doing my show, which was daily for over 4 years, and Dr. McDougall was a regular, we used to talk a lot, because he doesn't know this, and we can say it now. He's probably listening, but he made us both incredibly nervous,
Yeah.
because it's if the tech, here's the thing, I'm not a techie, and I have some tech to do at the end of this, because some of the speakers couldn't be here, and I'm going to do my best to screen share and show video. But if it didn't work, he'd be he could make you really nervous,
That's very true.
And so,
sometimes I would finish a webinar and I would be all wet, under my arms and my chest. Yeah.
So that was something you and I could talk about, but it was worth every minute. So thank you so much for carrying his Starch Solution torch. And it was so nice that we became friends because of Dr. McDougall.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. So next up is the co-founder of VegSource, which really could be VegForce, because it is a force. And Jeff Nelson, his conferences were some of the best, let's face it. And Dr. McDougall, I think, was probably the only speaker, or one of the only speakers, that were there every single year. And I remember that is the very first time I saw Dr. McDougall in person. I believe it was right after 9/11, if I'm not mistaken. And man, he was just larger than life, and he was so good looking. And Dr. McDougall said, what do you mean was, because if you said that to him, but it was incredible. And here he is to share some memories of Dr. McDougall. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, AJ, thanks a lot. Excuse me. This is a great event you're putting together today. Thank you. I'm really enjoying it and hearing everybody's stories. You know that I made a long video about John in memoriam, a tribute video that's on my channel. And in that, I spend over half an hour telling stories about him. And if people can go and hear my stories there. But I was thinking this morning, how do you honor John? How do you, with purpose, really honor his memory and what I learned from him? And everybody's talking about who he was and what he did. And, what do you do with that? 10 or 15 years ago, we came up with a program idea. AJ, you know this, you were involved in it, which was to take John's message into underserved areas, low income places, and try and teach it to people. We called it Meals for Health. And we started it in a food bank. And then later we did it in a church in Oakland. Jeff Novick originally helped design the program, what it would be. And it was basically the McDougall maximum weight loss program. And after we kind of came up with this, I went to John and said, hey, could you come and do it? Basically lead it. And he agreed immediately. He said, yes, yeah, I'm in. He'll travel to wherever we're doing it. So then I asked a lot more people to be involved, other vegan doctors, including many who've been speaking here today. And I said, oh, John McDougall, when I would ask them, they'd say, oh, McDougall's involved? Sure, count me in. So we helped a lot of people, I think, with that program who usually weren't going to be the target audience for this kind of message. We usually, when we put on our conferences, people could afford to fly to Los Angeles. They could afford to stay in a hotel, buy a ticket, and do all that sort of thing. But with Meals for Health, we targeted groups of people that, couldn't afford conferences and that sort of stuff. And we showed that John's message worked just as well across the board. They were as excited as anyone. And so that was a real honor to be able to do those programs with John. In the video that I made, I tell the story of how we met John almost 30 years ago. And it was because my wife, Sabrina, got very sick. She had an autoimmune disease called relapsing polychondritis. She happened to come across John's book. She went on his program and she put her autoimmune disease into remission. And that experience really, that changed the direction of our life. It changed the trajectory of our life. I was a writer-producer for many years. And after Sabrina got well, we decided to start a website about the vegan diet and health. This was in 1996. And we ended up putting on, the conferences and helping get other vegan doctors and experts onto the internet in the early days. And we made documentaries and, we did what we could to kind of help spread the word. And so I guess there was a moment where we realized that John didn't just save Sabrina's life, he changed our lives. Really, from that point going forward, we felt his message was important enough that we wanted to help spread it ourselves. And we almost felt like it was a duty, sort of an act of gratitude, because Sabrina had dodged a bullet. So there's the inspiration part of it that John provided to me and to so many other people, but also he was a friend, and he was someone that we liked a lot personally. We loved, and we wanted to be around. We enjoyed spending time with him, and we were lucky to be able to spend a lot of time with him over the years. John adored his family, and they adored him back, and I think that says a lot about him as well. You can talk about all his success and accomplishments, but what was most important to him was Mary and his kids and his grandkids, and having a very strong desire to leave the world a better place. And I think he did that. And as I mentioned, AJ, I wanted to play just a couple of minutes of the beginning of my video. It's a little photo montage of John. So I'm going to do that now, if I can get the technical part of it.
Right. And we have people standing by with headphones. If your sound doesn't play, we'll tell you right away.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, let's give it a shot here. Thanks a lot, AJ.
That was absolutely beautiful. I don't think there's a dry eye in the house. And some of those photos, like the one with him and Dr. Klapper when they were younger, that is priceless.
Yeah.
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 I think what everybody has in common here today that's both speaking and watching is we all love Dr. McDougall so much.
That's true.
Yeah. It's just such a, I mean, it's such a hole in our hearts. It's like, so thank you. I know he thought the world of you. You kind of remind me of him in a lot of ways. You're both Tauruses. You both have that, kind of.
Pugnacious. That's what I liked about John. He called things out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much I know you were really one of his biggest fans and supporters, and I know he knew that too.
Thanks, AJ.
All right. Thank you so much, Jeff. So next we have Brenda Davis. It's considered the premier plant-based dietitian. And I'm so grateful she's here because the last time that I spoke before the pandemic was at this wonderful event at Skamania Lodge produced by Benji Kurtz of Remedy Food. And I think you can see this photo. I remember I actually had lunch with Dr. McDougall, Mary, and Brenda, and it was just such a wonderful, wonderful time to be able to spend. So please welcome Brenda. You're going to have to unmute first. There we go. Just push that little button in the lower left-hand toolbar. There you, nope, not yet. If you go all the way down and there we go.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you, AJ, for doing this. It's a lot of work and you have an incredible heart, and thank you so much. And Jeff, thank you for that absolutely beautiful, touching tribute, both in words and in pictures. Really wonderful. I'm here in Northern Ontario at our cottage and very grateful I actually have internet and able to contribute. And so sorry, I'm running with about, I just fed 12 people, so a little bit late coming into the show, but thank you so much for having me. It's really a great honor and a privilege to be able to say a few words about my experience with Dr. John McDougall. I first came across the work of Dr. John McDougall when I was a public health nutritionist. And the year was 1989, and my husband and I had been kind of gravitating towards a plant-based diet for several years. And this man walked into my office at the public health unit, and he had in his arm Dr. McDougall's book, A Challenging Second Opinion. And he asked me if it was a reliable resource. And I had no idea. I remembered seeing a review of it in a Dietetic Association newsletter. So I went to my files and pulled it up. And it essentially said that the author was not qualified to speak on nutrition and that his claims were not reliable. I didn't find the review very helpful to me, so I asked if I could borrow the book. And I ordered several of the references. And although I didn't always come to the exact same conclusion as Dr. McDougall, he pushed me to dig deeper and to really question the status quo. I was so impressed by his pioneering work and his unique perspectives on health that I viewed him as a luminary who had the courage to speak his truth regardless of the backlash. And he basically, I think, blazed a trail for many of us who followed him. My first face-to-face meeting with Dr. McDougall was at Summerfest. And I think the year was actually about 1996. And John and I were always respectful to one another, even though we didn't always agree on things. And I can remember the two of us were just chatting when a couple came to him to ask him a question about omega-3 fatty acids. And essential fatty acids were a subject that I was really passionate about, and I had spent many hours researching. So I was very curious about what he would say. And his response was not at all what I expected. He looked at me and he looked at them and he said, I think you might want to ask Brenda. This is more her area of expertise. And to me, John was a superstar, and it meant so much to me at that time that he lifted me up to his followers in this way. But that was always my experience with John. He was so kind and thoughtful. I was so impressed that in his later years, he turned his attention to how our food choices impact the health of the planet and future generations. And he was absolutely relentless in trying to educate the world about making healthier, kinder, more ecologically sensible choices. John was charismatic, he was dedicated, and he was a passionate visionary who touched really countless lives. For many, he was a source of hope in their most difficult moments. For the entire plant-based community, his leadership helped us move forward amidst considerable adversity. And personally, he inspired me to have the courage to stand up for what I believe in at a time when plant-exclusive diets were considered risky, if not downright dangerous. And for that, I will always be very grateful. Although Dr. McDougall will be very dearly missed, his legacy in lifestyle medicine will never be forgotten. And I am one of many who will be inspired by Dr. McDougall for many, many years to come. And I am just so grateful to Chef AJ for doing what she does and doing it so beautifully and so generously, for organizing all of this. And thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of so many people.
Oh, thank you for that lovely tribute, Brenda. And really, well, I met you because of Dr. McDougall. We spoke together, I believe it was 2011 at the Advanced Study Weekend, and we exchanged books and we started our friendship then. So thanks so
That's
much,
right.
Brenda.
Thank you. Thanks
You're
for having me.
so welcome. So next we have a man who truly knows the value of a dollar, and he is going to explain to you what that means. Please welcome from Hawaii, Dr. Terry Shintani.
Hi, everybody. Before we get into the value of a dollar, I want to say I'm absolutely honored to be in the company of, I mean, you mentioned he's a luminary. I mean, I'd say everybody in this group is a luminary, and you included me among them. I'm greatly honored. But of course, I'm very, very humbled to be part of the group that's going to say something about the memory of our beloved and esteemed Dr. John McDougall. So let me start how I may be I may be his first disciple. So if you want to talk about someone who carried on his legacy, because I met him in the 1980s, and I actually the way I got into medicine was my father had cancer when I was 6 months old. And back in those days, there was nothing you could do. My dad, we were very fortunate. He survived. He had a permanent colostomy. But it always bothered me that modern medicine didn't have a cure for cancer. And as I went along with my education, it always bothered me. I actually went to law school first because I didn't think I could stand going through the many years it required to become a doctor. I wanted to be a doctor, but I think everyone knows it's 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of graduate school, then you got to go to residency. I didn't think I could handle that. So I went to law school first, and I actually hated it. And so I started thinking, well, maybe I should go into medicine anyway. Meanwhile, I was looking for a cure for cancer, an answer for that. And I ran into macrobiotics. I don't know how many of you know much about macrobiotics, but actually in one of its levels, it's very much like Dr. McDougall. It was whole, unprocessed food, no dairy, no meat, no. Macrobiotics has a range of different dietary levels, but One of the levels was very, very much like a vegan, whole food, unprocessed diet. And I actually followed that, and I lost a bunch of weight, and I felt all the health changes. But the problem was there was no science behind it. And then I hear about Dr. John McDougall, who, by the way, was practicing in Hawaii at the time. I think that's where he got his start. I said, I got to look into this. And I was trying to get some credentials up so that I could be accepted to med school. So I offered to do research on John's practice. And so I actually collected one of the first data sets with Dr. McDougall's patients. And we became friends as a result. And then I went on to medical school, and John kept hammering the message of plant-based diet and turning people's health around. And what impressed me the most was his scholarship. He backed everything up he said with medical literature. And actually, it was interesting because that's what I learned in law school, to back everything up, with some kind of evidence. And I said, boy, this guy's practicing medicine like he's a lawyer. He backs it up. And so I was very, very impressed with that. As it turned out, when I finished medical school, I was disgusted with the medical education that we had gotten in medical school. I think any of the MDs will agree with me that they don't teach it properly. They don't teach it enough. So I went and got a master's in nutrition at Harvard, so that if I said something out of the mainstream, I could back it up with my credentials. So I have a credential now in nutrition. I still remember I was talking about how to reverse heart disease. One of the cardiologists here said, no, that's not right, because I wasn't saying what the Heart Association was saying. I was saying what John McDougall was saying. And he said, that's not right. That's not what the Heart Association says. And he says, where did you get your nutrition background? And I said, Harvard. Where did you get yours? And he couldn't say a darn thing, because we all know that he didn't have a nutrition education. And so as time went on, John had a radio show. And when he left Hawaii, and this is the dollar story, AJ, when he left Hawaii, he called me into his office one day. He says, Terry, how'd you like to take over my patients? And I said, that would be a great honor. I said, but what's it going to cost? He says, I said, if you take over my patients, I'll charge you $1. And I said, what are you talking about? And literally, I still have the old check, the canceled check for $1. He sold me his medical practice. And I think he did that because I was the only doctor he could trust with his patients, because I was the only doctor in Hawaii at the time that would do nutrition first and medication later. And so, I'll never forget that. He actually got me started, and basically I carried on his work. But beyond that, I started to do research, and one of the doctors here was doing something in a low-income community. Well, I took the concept to the low-income communities in Hawaii, in the Native Hawaiian population, and I actually did a project, and we were turning their health around. And the interesting thing about this group is they were massively obese people. I had patients that were 300, 400, 500, 600, 700 pounds. And I created a program. It was 21 days. And I turned their health around, basically using these principles. And actually, my project won a national award. It was, all by applying the principles that I had learned from John. And it's a really, really a stunning thing. So I really owe John a lot. And I published the results of what they called the Hawaiian diet, because we worked in the Hawaiian community. And then I didn't know if John Westerdahl was going to be here, but when John left a radio show behind, it was the longest running radio talk show in Hawaii, and John Westerdahl took over for a little while. And then John left. John Westerdahl left. So I took it over. So I actually carried on that radio show for 25 years in Hawaii. There's another part of John's legacy that we were able to carry forward. And so he left a lot of he left a lot of tracks behind. John did. And you know how people were saying that he was bold and fearless. And before I get to that, because of the radio show, I got to meet luminaries like Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, like Dr. Colin Campbell, Dr. Ornish, Dr. Klapper. I never got a chance to meet Dr. Neal Barnard, but that was one of the things that really kept the concept going. And yeah, I have so many stories to tell.
Tell them.
One of the
I would love to hear stories, especially if you have funny ones.
Yeah. Oh, and I got to meet Brenda Davis too. I don't know if Brenda remembers me, but because of a lot of these connections, I got to meet many of the people. AJ, I hope we can have a community like this. I'd like to make friends with all of these folks.
I was just thinking the only way that this day would be better is if we were all together in the same room with the whole McDougall.
Yeah, I know, but I hope to be friends with all of the folks here, because I love the stories that everyone has about working with John. Indeed, he was generous beyond measure. Like I said, he literally gave me his medical practice, and that's really how I got my start. And in terms of the funny story, I remember talking to John about his research. I was really impressed with that he would back everything up. I mean, he has so many citations in his book because he cites the literature. And I said, how do you do it? He says, well, I go down to the medical library, and I know most of you, probably none of you know what the Hawaii Medical Library looked like, but he says, I used to bring a what do you call those little carts that he could stack the books on, and he said he would bump the cart down the stairs and bump the cart back up, and he said, you know, the little chips in the stone stairs, those are my chips. He had so many books that his cart, while he's bumping it up the stairs, actually started chipping the stones in the stairway. And he says, this is the mark I'm leaving on Hawaii. And if you go to the medical library, you'll still see little chips that John McDougall made by bumping all his literature up and down the stairs from the medical library. But he was actually a voracious reader, and he kept up with everything. And as someone else said, you'd ask him a question and he knew the answer. And if he didn't know it, he would tell you. So, but it's kind of leaves a hole in the heart, you know. I went through my medical career always having his phone number in my back pocket in case I needed to ask him about a question that I wasn't really clear on, or I had a difficult patient, for example, breast cancer patients and what medications we should or shouldn't use. He always had, or the value of breast surgery. His legacy goes far and wide. And when I see all these names here, he was the pioneer. He was doing this before Dean Ornish. I know Colin Campbell's been doing it a long time. He was starting the movement around, I don't know. I actually don't know how long Caldwell's been doing his work, but to me, John was one of the very first who was putting it all together, putting research behind it. Actually, a lot of the people in the macrobiotic community would rely on his books because it was so much in line with what macrobiotics was about. And so I'm confident that through all of us and many people who might not have been able to be here, his legacy is gonna live on, and we're really, I think we're all really fortunate to have had someone like that as a beacon as a beacon of truth and light in a medical field that's still quite broken. It's funny. I have a TikTok channel, a TikTok and Instagram channel. I put up these and the post I put up yesterday was about how in diabetes, whole grain is associated with lower diabetes rate, and red meat is associated with higher diabetes rate. And you should see the criticism I've gotten, even though I'm citing the literature. People still, I don't know how to say it, but there's still a lot of work to be done in our fields. So I hope everyone continues the work and is successful in their work. And after a while, the results can't be doubted. You see patients. I've seen many patients. I actually was in Newsweek because in my program, which was based on John McDougall's concepts, I took a lady who was on 80 units of insulin. I took her off in 5 days, and her blood sugar was normal. And the reporter couldn't believe it, and she said, "If you can prove it, I'll do your story." So I'm actually got a whole page in Newsweek about turning people's health around in that way. And the reality is, it wasn't that hard. If you just follow the basic principles, choose real food, literally food was the medicine. And someone else said, the conventional medicine should be the nutrition first. And then the alternative medicine should be the medication. So anyway, I think I've said enough, but I want to thank you, Chef AJ, for putting this together. We're very, very fortunate to have you as well, doing this wonderful little tribute. And again, I'm honored to be among the great names you have here. I'm truly in awe of the work that all of these folks have done. So thank you very much, Chef. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Shintani. And please don't be a stranger,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I see Michael's waving at me.
we should have a part.
I don't know if Caldwell was on the radio show. Michael was. I guess I saw Colin Campbell. I guess he left a little early.
We should have like an after party. We should have like a Zoom after party.
Yeah, I know.
That's my superpower in my family and in life. I love bringing people together. So That
Yeah.
is amazing. Thank you. So these
But
are all the people that we have on Zoom, but please stay tuned because I have 3 more tributes of people that couldn't make it. 2 of the people sent them in written and 1 by video. So let me read them because they're very touching. The first one is from Brian Wendell. He is the executive producer of the movie Forks Over Knives. These people could not make it because they're either in another country where it's the middle of the night or they're on a plane right now, but they wanted to extend their condolences to the family as well as give a tribute. So Brian Wendell writes, the number of people Dr. John McDougall influenced, directly and indirectly, makes his legacy nothing short of monumental. He was a healthy lifestyle pioneer, a teacher, and a medical doctor focused on his patients' well-being like no one else I've ever seen. He turned decades of his own research and experience into a simple, easy-to-understand way of eating that has improved countless lives through his books and McDougall programs and events. My own life would have been very different without Dr. McDougall. I'll never forget how he graciously invited this motivated 30-something to meet with him personally and attend a McDougall program event in Santa Rosa. He didn't know me from a hole in the wall, yet was welcoming and generous with his time. The first meeting and the weekend I spent in Santa Rosa played a large role in my wanting to make a film that became Forks Over Knives. I am forever in his debt, as are all of those influenced by the film and the work that would follow. Notoriously, Dr. McDougall wasn't into fluff and was never distracted by shiny objects. He dedicated himself first and foremost to his family, and he doggedly pursued the truth on behalf of his patients and the public. He didn't care one iota about notoriety, cocktail parties, except for the one at Miyoko's apparently, or anything else frivolous. There's a lesson in the way he approached life that I really appreciate. I am so grateful and honored to have known Dr. McDougall. His legacy lives on in all the people whose lives he touched. Thank you so much, Brian. And we have one from John Mackey, the former CEO and co-founder of Whole Foods. Dr. John McDougall was one of my personal heroes. He helped thousands of people working for Whole Foods Market to become healthier and live better lives through the total health immersions that he did with us. I attended many of his advanced study weekends in Santa Rosa, California over many years and always learned a great deal while making many new friends. His passion, hard work, and deep caring for his patients inspired me tremendously. He was a good man with a caring heart. I loved him very much. There seems to be a theme about that, about how he cares for his patients. So I hope, Charles, if you're watching, tell me if the sound is working. I'm going to share screen. We have a video testimonial, not testimonial, it's a tribute from Dr. Rosanne Alviera, and I'm going to do my best to share screen, and hopefully you can hear it and see it. Please let me know if you can't. Let's see, how do we do this? Charles, can you see this? Charles, you need to let me know. Or somebody put a thumbs up in the Zoom. Okay, I'm going to go with it.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Rosanne Oliveira, founder and CEO of the Plant-Based Life Foundation and former director of the first integrative medicine program at the University of California in Davis. It was during my time at UC Davis that I had an opportunity to learn about Dr. John McDougall's work and have an opportunity to meet them. At the time, I had invited already Drs. Colin Campbell and Aldo Esselstyn to come to UC Davis and talk about the benefits of a whole food plant-based diet. And a few months later, then Forks Over Knives was released. And it was the first time that I heard about Dr. John McDougall. And I decided that I wanted to meet him and I wanted him to come to UC Davis to talk about. And so that's when we met, when he actually came to give this talk. But one thing that I wanted to share today is that the first time I wrote him, I say, would you come and speak at the School of Medicine, speak to our faculty or our students? And he replied to me, it's something that I'll never forget. He said, are you sure you want me to come and speak at the School of Medicine? And I say, sure, why not? And within 5 minutes of his lecture starting, I understood why he was asking me that. Oh my God, he didn't measure any words. And he really shared this big message that he used to share, which was, why are you prescribing all of these drugs when there are dietary interventions that could do such a better job, not only preventing those chronic diseases that you're trying to treat, but actually treat and reverse many of those conditions. And then after his talk was over, his first question to me is, did you regret, or do you regret having invited me? And I say, not in a million years. But this is one of the things that I admired about him, how passionate he was about his beliefs and how much of a pioneer he was. I used to call him, plus Colin Campbell and Caldwell Esselstyn, as the three musketeers of the plant-based movement, because to me, they were together the leaders of the field, the people that started. But if we think about it, he started when we didn't even have the abundance of evidence, scientific evidence that we have today, that now is mainstream. We can accept, everybody's talking about plant-based nutrition. Can you imagine having started with this message 4 decades ago, when nobody was embracing it, when everything you had to say, people would come against? So I've always admired him very much for that. I also see a little bit of a paradox sometimes. One side of him seemed very rigid when he talked about supplements, for example. No supplements except for B12. But there was another side of him that was trying to find a middle ground so that he could help even more people start adopting a more plant-based diet. I remember he used to say, if adding a little bit of brown sugar to your oatmeal will make you eat oatmeal, then do it. Or an even more drastic point of view would be, if eating a piece of turkey every other year for Thanksgiving will help you stay whole food plant-based for 2 years, then do it. I say whole food plant-based, but we all know that he was the biggest proponent of a starch-based diet. It was those starches that would allow us to not only be healthier, but also if we wanted to lose weight, we would be able to lose weight and keep the weight off. What I will always remember is how warm and how caring he was with everybody. And he's helped so many patients through all of his in-person or online events over those 4 decades. I'm sure everybody is as grateful and thankful, if not more, than I am for all the work that he has done. He's going to leave us with some sayings that I will be repeating until the day I'm no longer on earth. And one of them is, the fat you eat is the fat you wear, or people love to hear good news about their bad habits. So those are a few of the things that I will always think of him. So today, in the celebration of life, what I wanted to share is how much, what I just said, how much we love and admire the work that you've done. Thank you so much for bringing so much joy and wisdom into the world. Thank you so much for sharing your life with us. And be sure that you left us with all the tools we need to not only succeed, but keep your legacy going. Thank you and God bless.
That was beautiful, beautiful. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, I gotta figure out. There we go. Okay, we're almost done, but I do want to share one more thing because I kind of want to end on a little bit upbeat, happy note here. So this is something that I did when I was at one of the McDougall Advanced Study Weekends, and it's just a little tribute, very short, to Dr. McDougall. I do want to say Dr. Olvera spoke at one of the McDougall Advanced Study Weekends. She was fabulous, and I actually met her because of Anne and Dr. Esselstyn. She was a guest at their house when I was visiting, and it's just amazing how everyone is so generous with the connections here and how we all have become not just colleagues, but friends. So as you know, Dr. McDougall is known for telling people to eat starch, and this is an homage to Dr. McDougall. Let's see, how do we do this? I'm a little bit nervous, so I gotta go share sound, and share. Nope. Can you see that, Charles? Please nod if you can see the video.
It's a delay, not yet.
It's a video. Can you see a video of me? I need to know.
Yes, I see it. I see it.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna start it then. And here we go. Tell me if you can hear it.
I'm an eater of potatoes. Yes. I eat potatoes every day.
Can you see?
There's a reason that I am so trim.
Oops.
This is Sundays for
Great,
Dogs.
a YouTube commercial.
Air-dried dog food.
This figures.
90% meat.
That's what happens when you monetize your channel. Oh my goodness, if I had thought of it. I'm so sorry. And of course it's spinning. Why does this have to happen now? Oh, it's so frustrating. All right. Charles, the internet, are we on Ethernet?
We are on the internet.
Okay. Well, I'm going to stop the share. All right. I'm going to try a different one. I apologize for that. I've got one more. This will be, I can actually just, I am not, okay, where is my, I can't find my thing. So we might have to, I have a wonderful tribute to him. It's a song that someone else wrote, but I can't seem to find my, my Google. Hold on. Oh, I've got to cut this out first. There we go. All right. I'm going to try another one. If it doesn't work, I'll let everybody go. This was a song that was written by a songwriter for Dr. McDougall when he spoke at the, it was called Healthy Taste of LA. And hopefully this one will work and there won't be any commercials. Tell me if you can see it and hear it, Charles. Yes. You hear it? No sound?
Read his books or watch a show. It'll tell you what you need to know.
No sound?
This man is raved and told to starch was a good thing long ago. Now you're thinking about all these other diets. There was Atkins you recall. And the South Beach folks think they are right. They say no carbs. You said you gotta go for starch. I heard it. Yes, I heard it. Now it seems you're telling me you're meatless and it's great, but still can't fit into your pants. The doc can show you the way. You should be like old Jack Frat, he says, cause the fat you eat today is the fat you'll wear. Better not forget his message for his name. It's John McDougall. I heard it. You said you gotta go for start. I heard it.
Should I play the other song or forget about it?
You said you gotta go for start. You said you gotta go for start. I heard it. Yes, I heard it. If you're thinking about if he's wrong or right, well, I got news for you all. When I started following his advice, that's when I got you said you gotta go for stars. I heard it. Yes, I heard it.
So if there was sound problems, what I'll do is I'll put the songs on their own channel and link to them so you can see that. On behalf of all the wonderful presenters today, everyone watching, I appreciate them so much. I appreciate you. And I just want to say that I can believe I can speak for everyone watching, everyone presenting, that we want to send our deepest condolences to the entire McDougall family. And we hope you know how deeply Dr. McDougall was loved. And we will carry his torch. And the final thing I can say is, in honor of Dr. McDougall's memory, just eat a damn potato. Thank you. I love you all. Take care. Bye-bye.